These ladies are excited to give you some feedback and answer some of your questions directly and candidly. And so without further ado, Elisa and Audrey.
Hi. I've got mine. They're in. They're in. Well, they're very. Not everyone has the most gorgeous handwriting. I should probably turn on the mic.
So Shay chose the two naughtiest survivors for this job, which is probably not. Which she's like, do you want to do the Q&A?
Deliberate.
I know. Which she's like, do you want to do the Q&A? I'm like, oh, give my opinions on things.
And then she said to me, Audrey, you and I, she picked the right ones. We're good at giving our opinions.
We are.
Yeah, so.
But we did this last year, and I want to make sure that all the survivors in the room, you are welcome to answer questions. If there is something, please raise your hand. One of us probably know you, and we can be like, hey, we want to make sure that we are bringing all the voices to the table. Because as much as Audrey's and my opinions are very, very good, they are not the only opinions in the room. Do you have one you want to get started on? Or? Okay, I had a request to make this one quickly because this person has to leave. So I would like to know how many survivors received medical care while being trafficked. I think that's a really good question. I think that medical providers, service providers, are actually some of the first responders that will ever actually see us. I personally went to the hospital on numerous occasions, but I do not actually think that the people that I interacted with were appropriately trained on how to identify and how to respond. I think that medical service providers have a huge stake in this work because we see you for a number of reasons, whether that be chemical dependency or STDs, or just the simple fact that, like, I broke my ankle today walking in 10-inch high heels on the track, whatever that is. So I can honestly say that most of us probably did. Does anyone want to add to that?
I have a little something to add to that. I had an experience, I remember having my daughter who was, and again, I was pregnant, I was planning to get an abortion, but by that point I was still using drugs, I was still on the track, and I said next week, and then I had a belly, and how I initially got into going to the hospital was another exploited woman who was an addict said to me, you know you're pregnant, you can get on the methadone clinic. So that's the only reason why I even went to the hospital, so you had to go in for them to evaluate you. But anyway, down the line, after that, I remember having my daughter, so I had no prenatal care. So I go into labor, I go to the hospital, and of course my daughter was born addicted, and I remember I wasn't allowed to take her out of the nursery. So if I wanted to feed her, I had to go into the nursery. So I remember waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning for the 1 a.m. feeding. I went to the nursery. A nurse was holding my newborn baby. She knew it was my baby. My esteem was so low, all I could do was stand over her. I didn't have the heart to say, bitch, give me my baby. Because that's what I wanted to say, right? But my esteem was so low. And I remember a doctor came in, I'll never forget this, and he said to the nurse, he said, is that her baby? She said, yeah. He said, give her baby. He had became their pediatrician. Fast forward 10 years later, I started doing this work. I trained in the hospital, and it kicked up all kind of memories, and I thought of him. I called the hospital. I looked him up online to find out where he worked because he had since treated my children and moved on. This was the weirdest thing because when I called and asked for him, someone said, hold on, and got him. You can't never call a doctor and they say, hold on, doctor, here's on the phone. He gets on the phone, and I said to him, I don't know if you remember me. You used to treat my children. I'm in recovery now. I've been out of the life and clean for, I think at that time, might have been 8 or 9 years. And I reminded him of that incident. It was a couple of days after Christmas. He broke down and cried on the phone. Wow. And he said to me, that is the best gift that I've gotten this Christmas season. I could hear him sobbing. But that was my only good experience, and I felt that it was real important because that hadn't been my experiences ever. and that I needed to call him and let him know what he had done and the difference he made in my life. Because that nurse seen a dope fiend who just had a drug-addicted baby, who is not worthy of giving her a bottle, and he made all the difference.
Is he still around?
He should, yeah, he is. Yes. And that was before we even talked about this. You know, this wasn't even a public. We just said, at that, we didn't even talk about addiction, right? It was all bad. You're all bad people. And he stood for something back then, right? So, all right. Brian, one question you'd like to ask this Bible. What would you say to someone who doesn't see themselves as a victim in the life? Now, can I run with this mic? I've been dying to run with this mic because I had my professional clothes on yesterday and the day before, and now I have none left. So I had this on, so I want to run with the mic. I feel like I'm ready for sport. You're not going to answer this question?
We get less square as the time goes
Someone
on.
who doesn't see themselves as a victim in the life.
I probably, a lot of women don't see themselves as victims because it's become so normalized. But I would talk to her about it and tell her the truth about the life, because she doesn't even know that. And that you are perceived to be a victim because of all these things.
Thank you. And to run. This is nice. We got a runner.
I'm back.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah. No, as the week goes on, I find we get out of the square. The first thing Audrey said to me yesterday, she's like, "Oh, girl, you look like an earthling. You're such a square." And I'm like, "Excuse me." So, hi, you have a beanie today. I'm gonna actually field this one, but I also want to kick this off to specifically Kathleen and Benita, because I know that we have a different opinion on this, and I think this is really important. So this question is fun for me. It's, what is the positive/negative effect of faith-based organization providers, e.g. outreach, residential programs, and the positive outcome for survivors? Benita knows why I'm picking on her on this one.
You said what was the beginning of that? I'm sorry, I am getting.
What is the positive negative effect of faith-based organization providers?
Okay, yeah, because we have at Breaking Free worked with a faith-based organization that had a transitional house, and the positive was they showed a lot of love. They really did. They were there for the women. They really helped them understand things. The negative was they felt they needed to go see a psychologist or a therapist at least 3 hours a day each. That's very negative. The other negative part was that, what did they do? Gosh. When it came to treatment things, we didn't, it wasn't, church. They insisted that the ladies go to the church, their church. You had a lot of women of color in that house. You had some women who didn't go to church at all. It's not your job to decide what church they go to. It just isn't. Some of the women of color wanted to go to their family's church, and they didn't like that, and those were things that would put them out of the house. If you're going to be a faith-based organization, I think you need to get some training and understand the dynamics of running one.
I 100% agree with Benita on that.
Can I answer that too?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because I was with Catholic Charities, and they gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted to do with our program. And so what I said went. The downfall of that, 2 downfalls for that. I mean, they're always behind the women, which was absolutely wonderful. They were great with that. The downfall with that was they would hold me back kind of going different places to do something, because it was always about the money, and then if it was, then they would want somebody who had a higher degree. Another downfall was about the pay. My pay was just as high as my boss's pay. But the service, the people who worked with me started out with a little bit more than minimum wage, because they were women who had recovered, and they didn't have the education. And that's where I always argued with them about that. You know, I said, well, they've got the education from out there. They've got that degree from the Street Academy. You'll never have it. She said, well, my master's degree counts for something. I said, well, of course it does. So fire me then. I want them to be paid. You know, they never fired me.
I would fire you. Specifically, I love answering this question because I'm an atheist, and honestly, that I am actually kind of abnormal. I really am an abnormality in this movement in that sense. And I struggle with faith-based because I think sometimes there's a certain negativity that we, basically the negative use of religion. I believe that faith is a beautiful gift, and I think that it's important that we're utilizing that as it can be in these instances. But I think we also need to acknowledge that not all survivors are the same. And if when I was getting out of the life, if I had ran into a faith-based organization, I would have run away screaming. And OPS is not faith-based, and I mean, that's awesome. But it also does mean that like we're not available for certain faith-based funding and things like that. So I think that, you know, there is kind of one of those things where, I'll just say this one last thing about the faith-based. I believe that every woman in this room is an empowered, liberated, beautiful human being on their own right, and you do not owe anything to any other higher power, male or female. You are getting out, and your success is yours, and you own that, and that is yours. And I think that is something that sometimes faith can gloss over a bit, and that we need to thank the higher spaghetti monster, or whatever you believe in, for that success of getting out. And I think it's important for all of us to own our power. So I mean, that's kind of my little 2 cents on it.
And I also want to add to that, I come from that old school Southern Baptist, punishing God family, right? That's how they were brought up. So I say that to say, you have to realize that some people were brought up in that you're going to die and go to hell, that punishing God. I know for me, I'm like you, and I do believe in a higher power, and I do believe in God, but the one that my mother introduced me to had me so afraid, and if I walked in anywhere that was talking religion and got scared, I mean, I would have been out of there. And this is someone who believes in a higher power, but the one I was raised, my mother taught me about, always told me I was bad, always told me I was gonna, if you do that, you're gonna die and go to hell, right? So you have to be careful. You don't know. Some people are traumatized from the religion they were brought up in.
And trauma is, I mean, and that's a real thing, specifically around, we have all the kind of church problems. Specifically, a lot of us experience trauma in religious systems. Chris. Oh, thank you, Molly. Molly, to the rescue.
Hey, I think this is a great question. This is so loud. And it's a really important question. And I think that for folks who are helped through Christianity, that this is a really powerful experience for them. And that I think that it's an important part of the services that can be provided in doing this work. And we also have issues if you've been abused by Christianity. That would be an issue if you've been trafficked by Christian organizations, which is certainly something that happens. But also for other cultures, for instance, in the Native community, there's certainly Native people who are Christians, but there's been a tremendous amount of generational violence committed by Christians against Native people, and many, many Native people would not be helped in that environment. So I want to say that. And the other piece that I want to say is for the churches that are actively homophobic, this is a very big problem as well. Thank you.
Autumn!
Oh, no.
I want to work the sweats. Don't bring it. I want to work the down outfit. I figure it works with jogging. And okay. All right. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Are there any terms, messaging points in the anti-trafficking / prostitution movement you want to correct? You are, sister girl.
Yeah, I'd love to, but thank you for asking. when I talk about persons that have been exploited, I use the ED, prostituted, exploited, trafficked, which implies that it is something that was done to that person. I never ever use the quote-unquote sex work term. Sex is not work, it's not designed to be work, and it simply doesn't exist. So we need, I know there's a lot of things coming up around that. I call it what it is. It's prostitution. I say I'm a survivor of systems of prostitution, and that's encompassing of stripping and trafficked by organized crime, and it's encompassed of a lot of different things, of street prostitution and all types of different things. I want to say, at least in that way, there's no such thing as sex work, and we need to stop using that language.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Audrey's in such better shape than I am. Like, I'm like, that's a step count going that I'm not having. I'm just not having it. Let's see here. Megan, you might be good at this one. Who, parentheses, ally. Who in leadership government positions have you met or worked with that you feel accurately represents and supports the survivor community? Should be. I can actually answer that because I have a lot of really great examples of that in Seattle. Our AG's office is on board with what we do. I recently actually did a presentation with one of our deputy AGs regarding trafficking. It was a really interesting presentation because he had absolutely no reason to invite me, but he did invite me to come alongside and actually have the conversation with him. It was hilarious because we were stuck in a car for about 3 hours together on a really rainy night in Seattle, and I'm going, which is, if you know Seattle, that's not uncommon. And it was really great because we just sat and talked like two normal people stuck in traffic. And it was really awesome to just kind of have a conversation and be like, hey, so you worked for the Hague and that's kind of insane. Can you tell me what that means? Like, that's kind of crazy. And he's like, hey, you're getting your MPA degree. I have no idea what it's like doing that. What's that like? And, oh, you have a dog. Oh, I have a dog. And you have kids. And it was really nice to just connect with somebody on a very real human level. I've been very, very, very fortunate in this work to run alongside that quite frequently. And I want to encourage the allies in the room, as I've said before many times, we're humans, we have dogs. I like to knit. It's totally a thing. I was like knitting on the plane on the way over. You might find you have more in common with us than you first think.
Anybody else?
Anybody else got any really awesome examples of government peoples? Oh, that really scares me.
Phoenix is wonderful.
Phoenix is great. Phoenix is awesome.
Prosecutor's office all the way down.
So, yes, Phoenix. Apparently moved to Phoenix.
Lisa, can I say something about that?
Please do.
Government stuff?
I'm not doing this.
So I was
Use your mentor voice.
I was recently with a survivor at a legislative hearing in the district. And this particular survivor is wonderful and had prepared remarks based on the legislation. She had lots of really great things to say about the legislation, and when the state representative introduced her, she said, and now she's going to come up and tell her story. And I thought my head was going to explode, because, you know, it does a lot. And then I thought, it does. It's like all the mush in there now at this point. This is an opportunity. Number one, I reiterated to the survivor, you get up there and you say whatever you want. You want to say your remarks, say your remarks. If you don't want to say your remarks and you want to sit here and bow out, that's fine as well. So instead I flipped it and turned it into an education opportunity that those looking to push legislation, yes, stories are really important and impactful, but you can't assume. You need to ask permission.
You need to ensure that the survivor wants their name used, their full name used. There's always press at these events. Make sure the survivor gives permission. Make sure if they do not, that the press in the room knows this. And if the survivor does not want to answer questions, make that known beforehand. So I think those of us in this room who do advocacy work, who work with our legislators, need to make sure that that's part of the education we give them as well. Because I was horrified, right? Because she had so much good stuff to say about the bill, and she did. She went on and she said amazing things about the bill, and said like 3 sentences about her story. But the way that it was teed up by that legislator, who's a lovely, wonderful, kind woman, I was just like, no, okay. Anyway, it's just my
Thank
two
you.
Thank you, Shay.
We love your 2 cents. Okay, next question. How do you feel today? And I think it says something about, do you forgive your pimp? Have you forgiven your pimp? How do I feel today? I feel fabulous. Like, I'm just grateful. Listen, I keep life real simple. I'm grateful to be above ground. No, I'm serious. I'm like, it's better to be seen than to be viewed, like all that. You know what I'm saying? So I say all that to say, I am okay today. Some people might take this the wrong way, but I also look at it that I had an opportunity to live 2 different lifestyles in one lifetime, right? And I feel great that what was meant to tear me down has really helped me to become the woman that I am today, and it has given me the ability to help other survivors that's coming behind me. Another reason I feel great, even coming from where I came from and the odds were against me, right? Because really I should have been viewed a long time ago, and right? And the odds were really, really, you shouldn't live to be 21 sort of thing. But for me, I'm just like so full of gratitude because I know people who have not been through what I have gone through and who live to be 80 or 90 and have their purpose in life had never been revealed to them. So I'm so grateful that I always say, if I left this earth today or tomorrow, I understood my purpose and what I am here to do today. The other thing, have I forgiven my pimp? Here's what I've learned in my recovery process throughout. Yes, I have. And I don't forgive people because I think you're like really sweet. I forgive people for my healing. When I hold on to resentments and play the blame game, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me sick. There's no healing in blaming people and holding, I'm responsible for my recovery. And so a part of my recovery, right, and here's the other thing, I haven't caused that kind of harm to people, but I've done some things that I wouldn't stand in front of this room through active addiction. There's some things I'll take to my grave. And so if I expect to be forgiven for some of the things I've done, who am I not to forgive somebody else? And it's freeing. The forgiving is for me. It's not for him. It's for my peace. Does anyone else want to add to this? Okay.
Yes, I want to say I agree totally with you. I have to honestly say I have 2 of my pimps who have come and apologized to me for what they had caused in my life, because for them it was a learned behavior as well. And forgiving is something I needed to do because I got to give them credit. Out of all the people who have harmed me, from systems to the buyers to the pimps, these 2 were the only ones who came up and said, if I caused this, I am so sorry. And they've changed their life. So I believe in that. You've got to believe that someone can change, even Johns, because we've had Johns in our John school that said, I didn't know. I really didn't know. So forgiveness is key for me. There's some sick people out here who know they're not going to be forgiven. I put a bullet between their eyes, okay, with some of the pimps. But yeah, I believe in forgiveness when it's possible and when it's real.
So I just have to read this comment because it's freaking priceless. Describe one thing you learned that was unexpected, and the comment is how much Shay Rhodes loves to play air hockey. and for the sake of discretion, I'll not read that question right now. It was a good question. I just want keep it real. You really do. And yet the reigning champion of air hockey is Chris. By a long shot. It was really just a lesson in how much we all suck at air hockey.
At 8, let's be clear, at 8-0, I just walked away from the table.
Sorry, there's got to be some levity here. This is I'm going to direct this at kind of all of the survivors in the room. What do you need that you aren't getting now in this movement? I know, it's a ponderous one.
Take it to Megan. We
Megan.
We have not put Megan on the spot, and
No,
she's loving that we
Make
have
lunch later.
it. So we will.
That's a great question. I wish I had time to think about it. I think for my organization, funding, this is the first year that I'm a W-2 employee of the organization that I founded. So I have worked on W-9s for my own organization for the last 4 years. And it has been an uphill battle just to get that funding. So whether that is just direct funding or having allies come in and help with things like how to write grants and how to do program evaluation, just that additional support to give of their time and expertise, I think that's something that's needed. And I would say on the opposite side, less of what's needed is like, please don't come hug me and stroke my arms when I speak. So less of that.
Please.
Kathleen has one.
Hold on, I got one. You got really quick.
As older survivors, you forget about us.
No.
We're not, we become non-entities, almost. So there's very few, at my age, very few people who say, I love you for this, because you always include me. Benita always includes me. But there's lots of other times that, because I'm not included, so people don't, who's she? And I'm one of the founders of the movement. So, anyway, that's all I have to say.
All right.
Absolutely agree with you.
That's
Respect our foremothers.
Okay, sorry. I just got here and Grace was me just 8, so forgive me for screwing my teeth. Something I need, and I know women who look like me need, is other women who look like us in this movement. This movement gives an opportunity to show up authentically and given the amount of space that they need. So that's something that is important to me. I know the amount of women who look like me who are affected, however, I don't see them and can't connect with them or access them when the room is really saturated by white women. So I really need, and I'm asking you all actually in this room to find a way to connect with these women because we do need you.
Okay, I thought that this was, I feel like all of us survivors are pushing this message, and so the person that made this comment, the question, describe one thing you learned that was unexpected, and this is the thing I think we'll all agree that we want folks, survivors want folks to get and understand. I can't verbalize it enough, but it says how organizations so chronically underpay survivors. I knew it was true, but this really drove it home, right? And that's what we want folks to understand. And yes, we're survivors, but we are more than survivors, right? We are employable. We can do things other than, right? If it's a survivor-led agency, of course, most of us want to do that work, but that's not the only work a lot of us know how to do in your agencies, right? And I am appreciating that someone in the room really got that, right? Because I know there's some people who are still questioning that. I heard a lot of stuff about degrees and that sort of thing. I feel, and I never, really thought I would ever use the word privilege, but the organization, My Life, My Choices, throughout this conference and the workshops and that I've listened to, particularly the one you did this morning, I really felt a sense of gratitude for, and I have to give her a shout out, she's not here, but Lisa Goldblatt Grace, who's the co-founder and director of My Life, My Choice, right? All the things that folks are saying should be fair. I have the privilege of getting those things. I think of a woman, I'll tell you how, and I'm talking a highly educated ally. And I remember in the beginning, and she would pay me the same as well, but when we would do trainings, she was so gracious. She would always put my name above hers on the PowerPoint. And then there came a time where I said, sweetie, you can put my name under yours. You've done the work. But she knew she was a smart woman. She believed in me. She didn't have to belittle me to shine or use me to shine. She fought for me. She would look at people and they're like, do you pay her? Like she almost wanted to, like a Shay, wanted to put her, right, strangle them. And so I feel very privileged in that sense that I really can't stand before you. I can't complain about my pay. I'm not going to tell you my pay, but I will say this, and I always say this, and it's not me, it's through strong allies, and I feel very fortunate, I feel very blessed. I always say people with master's degrees would be mad as shit if they knew how much I got paid. They'd be like, God damn, I got all that education and that's what she's making? So I feel, but that's a blessing. I'm not bragging. When I see how other survivors are struggling, they deserve allies like the one I have that will do the same things that she has done for me, because that has built my self-esteem, that has built my self-worth, and that damn sure makes me work for every dollar that I am given, because she's paying me good money, which means when someone pays me good money, I'm obligated to do my best and not do a half-assed job. Does anyone else want to add to that? Another survivor?
You just spoke about a master's degree and how someone would be really upset, and the thought that came to my mind was, but your lived experience is very valuable, and that's something I don't know if people think about, but it's something that I'm fighting for right now, is that my lived experience is my education. It's how I learned my skills, my survival. That's what I'm motivated by. So I just wanted to add that when you're thinking about pay, and you're thinking about what someone can contribute to your organization, the skills that they've learned in life are just as valuable as what, if not more, than what I've learned in the classroom as well. So just my thought on that.
Thank you.
Shay, you got me talking so much. Cold. I know. Yeah, we can be prickly cactus loves together. What would you like to see happen next? What do you believe is needed? I think this is a really broad question. And I kind of like it because I think we kind of focus on the fads in the movement. Like, okay, today we're going to focus on service provision, and then tomorrow we're going to focus on outreach, and then the next day we're going to focus on demand reduction because that's just the fad. It's honestly, it's what we're focusing on why it's getting funding, which I think is problematic, because we're saying, oh, well, we're going to do this specific program or project because we know that's where the funding is focused right now. Again, when I do my grant reviewing, that is kind of what I see, is a lot of organizations that are doing the fad work. Like, oh, we need to start a mentoring program because that's a big thing right now. So we're going to design and make this mentoring program, even though they've never talked to a survivor about a mentoring program. They don't have survivors running in their agencies. They don't actually have a whole lot of experience in this. So what I would like to see happen next is for us to actually focus on the movement as a whole. Like, one of the problems that I saw in Seattle was the over-focus of demand reduction and the non-focus on survivor services, and that caused a major problem. We cannot address this in one silo. It's never going to get fixed. We have to focus on this as a broad spectrum problem. Does any of the other survivors in the room have anything that you really wish maybe hasn't gotten enough attention, of an area of the movement that needs more attention?
Yeah, so I think one thing, and Haley and I kind of touched on it in our presentation, I'll stand up, I'm fun-sized, is that, I'm wearing something, I'm not. Is definitely, we talk about this a lot, is the link between pornography and sex trafficking. I can't tell you how many times I've shared my story and people are like, that's not trafficking, you know, it's dealing with pornography. Is pornography always a form of sex trafficking? No. But can it be? Yes. And there's a lot of lack of awareness and understanding about that. And, you know, I was telling Haley years ago when I spoke at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation Summit, also known as NCOSE, because I want to say all that. It's like Nick, you know, shorten it, make it sound cute. And everything. And, you know, when I spoke years ago, I went there and I was like, you know, when you go to these conferences, you see the same people over and over and over, so it's like more of a family reunion type situation, usually. And when I was there, I didn't see anybody I knew. I was like, what in the world? Like, why is nobody from anti-human trafficking stuff there? And it's because a lot of people didn't see the connection. And now they have all these people coming alongside, partnering with them, anti-human trafficking organizations, because they're like, wait a second, there is a connection. So now they have so many collaborations, but I would love to see more of that, like more of that understanding, more ways on how to assist the survivors, but changing laws, because it's so hard. Like, anti-human trafficking laws are hard, but like anti-pornography is really hard. And they've been doing an incredible job being the champions for that, so that's something. So if you're interested in that, see me or Haley.
All right, no, that's really great comment, great question, actually. The intersectionality of this, like I said, prostitution, commercial sexual exploitation is a culmination of traumas. It is a culmination of gender-based violences. And you cannot simply look at the single entity of prostitution and say, this is the thing we're going to work on and that's it. It's much larger than that. The prostitution contributes to women's condition as a whole. And I think that's something we really need to be aware of.
Do you got a good one? Do you have a good one? Go right ahead. You might have a good one. Do you have a better one? Go right ahead. Okay.
All right. Shay, time. Shay, time. Molly, time. Time. About half an hour. It's a really long time.
That is a really long
It's a
time.
really long time. So, okay.
You don't have to go a half an hour.
I know, but when have you ever known me not to go out?
Never.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how would you incorporate law enforcement in prevention strategies? I'm asking this Autumn. Oh, good. I was like, Jesus, is she not smoke again?
I was thinking about it.
I know you were. I know you were. When I heard half an hour, I was like, oh, I'm never going to make it that long. I think this one's a good one for you because of the plenary that you did earlier around policy and workshopping with the groups and what we heard from Philadelphia around bringing the law enforcement into the answer of this problem. So what do you have to say about law enforcement and prevention work?
Oh,
Yeah, you're gonna get that.
thanks.
Sorry.
So I think as a piece of prevention, it's actually to run anti-demand strategies and initiatives. Just to put it simply, it's by arresting sex buyers and holding them accountable. Because I have a quote and it says, if I get it right, let's see, I'm sleeping for a moment. There isn't always a trafficker, but there's always a sex buyer. So sex buyers really do fuel the sex trade, and I think we need to hold them accountable in that way by using anti-demand strategies as prevention work.
Thank you, Autumn. We have a hand up right there.
I'm coming.
You are jogging. Good.
I am
Come
jogging.
on.
No, this is not jogging. It's like relatively quick, rapid.
I'm appreciating that. Yeah.
I just have like a few comments on even the concept of prevention, especially when you're talking about prevention and educating teens, and especially in teen girls. Like, I feel like it's like perpetuating rape culture. If we're going into schools and we're telling girls like, this is how not to get trafficked, like don't get trafficked, we're almost like sending the message that like you can somehow like choose not to be trafficked. And like it's just completely unfair to, you know, say to these girls, like, you're 14, 15, however old you are, that you need to be able to outsmart like 40-year-old men. And so I really do appreciate the conversation of like moving away from thinking of prevention as like educating youth. Like, I feel like there's a place for that. I think it needs to be like rebranded as maybe like an intervention or like education or like raising awareness. But when I think we label that work as prevention, it's almost like saying we're charging these youth with avoiding being exploited. And so prevention really needs to be about like, instead of asking her like, you know, how to not get into prostitution, we need to say like, well, why do men buy sex? And like, why do people traffic?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I do a lot of prevention work at My Life, My Choice, and that's how we really present it. It's a 10-week, it's not a one-time shot deal. Let me tell you young people how not to be trafficked, right? Because we found that that's not good. But we do use it as an educational tool and informational. And so you do have to, the good news is that we have been evaluated. We had and it's not released yet, but where the findings will be released in September. But what they found is that it had, our 10-week groups has prevented young people from domestic violence relationships as much. The research showed that they share the information with other peers, and we think that's fantastic when the information comes, right? Because, you know, they all say the grown-ups think they know, they don't know. So it's really powerful that was in the research that, you know, that the young people, when they leave our groups, that they pass the information on to peers. And that's what we want them to do. So with that said, to kind of piggyback off that, you have to take time, right? And again, we have like a 10-week session, right? Informational, and not that one shot here. If you don't do this, you won't. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you have to be really careful. Which leads to, I was just going to read this. How can we reach folks earlier or better when they're being exploited? And when I am, my next journey in this movement is to, I have my new word, it's not recruit, it's invite.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's
Right,
much better.
because I should not be recruiting survivor leaders to do prevention work.
Good
Okay,
job.
I should be inviting them, which is my new word. Someone here gave that word to me. Was that you? Thank you, darling. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So that is what I'm, you know, in my organization, taking to the next level with our prevention work being used in 31, 32 states in the U.S., inviting survivors, because what we do know for sure, and the research has shown, that in the prevention work, if you have survivors giving that information, and being a part of those groups and co-facilitating those groups, it's more powerful. And so for me, and the person who wrote this, the answer to this is we have to begin when they're young, right? I know for me, we have a mentoring program. I heard folks talking about mentoring. I would love to do more prevention than mentoring, right? Because when you get to the mentoring phase, the harm has been caused. I'd like to do more, and we do, and really getting out there promoting our prevention solution model. And we have to start You know what I mean? Giving that information. I always think of, I got no information. And believe it or not, if someone brought the information that we brought, because some of it says the slick stuff that that 40-year-old guy will say to you, right? And if I had gotten that kind of information, when the things that were said to me, I would have said, oh, to myself, you must be a pimp. That's the same shit they told me in that prevention group, you'd say. That really does, it would have made a huge difference in my life. Instead of, we always do the stranger danger. And I said this yesterday, most exploiters, a lot of them aren't strangers. A lot of the pimps that are turning out the youth that we work with live right in their neighborhoods. They're people that they went to school with that they see from day to day. So I'm a true believer in moving this movement and inviting survivors to really help support prevention and reaching our young people. Okay.
Oh, Kathleen, sorry.
I think that also too, we cannot forget about the young guys. If you want to do prevention, we have to do prevention with the young men too. You know, start early so they don't end up getting into or following in the footsteps of their uncles or their dads or other people. We need to get it all around, you know, so it's not put our finger in that dike and pull it out and watch that water come through. We need to do all of it.
Okay, yeah, kind of going off what you were saying with that, like we have to remember to include the boys who've been, you know, who've been sex trafficked or sexually trafficked, however you want to say it. We have to include them in these conversations and these efforts. The LGBTQ population, making sure, the thing is, people have different faiths and things like that, but all people deserve to be helped and to receive recovery and to be empowered. But yeah, definitely including them. I know for prevention, so I do work with fashion. The girls who make, one of the designers or companies I collaborate with, the girls are in Nepal and they have been, they were met at the border. They have a border patrol thing and they kind of intersect when they see the girls being like transported because they're going because this is what their family said to do. It wasn't really a kidnapping thing. It's kind of like a brainwashing thing within your family, so familia. And then they are, you know, ask questions and things. And again, it's a really hard conversation because you have to be intentional because you're saying, well, I have a job for you. Why don't you come to the sewing center? So being intentional with those conversations. But I think also a big reason that I'm so appreciative when people buy the clothes that I've designed is that it is a form of prevention. We're giving these girls a job. We're teaching them a trade. And there's so many ethical brands out there doing that. There's one of my friends has men who dropped out of gangs making the shoes that so they don't go back into that. So supporting also different ethical brands and fashion brands for people who don't have the time to really volunteer is a really great option for support to prevention of people going back in or even going into it in the first place. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to read, I feel like some of the comments to it, you know, I want to acknowledge. And this weekend I've been hearing about this, and the young woman just kind of shared about this. And the second question, what changes, if any, do you plan to implement in your workplace? And this person said, educate myself more on Black women / slave history, so I'm able to help educate Black women / girls so they feel more comfortable coming into my office for assistance. And I heard a lot of that around here where, you know, this young lady just shared that, you know, even if there aren't a lot of brown women running organizations, other organizations who might not hire or have, not that you don't hire, but might not have women of color, this is real important. For me, I have to be real honest, like in this movement, my allies who I feel comfortable with were white women. They really, I mean, because there just weren't enough Black women that we just didn't have them, right? But I say that to say, thank God, even if I was able to, I just want to say there are white allies men or women, that are out here that will supplement, that you can feel safe enough going to, even though they don't look like us. Because I wouldn't be here today. So I want to give shout outs to the folks that are in the room who are not people of color, who cared enough to care about me and to fight for me and to help me become who I am today. So it's just this thing we have to also, I've learned, you got to work with what you got. You know what I'm saying? And I have to find there's good people in all of us. You know what I mean? And even when we talk about the slavery days, there were white people that hid slaves that weren't about slavery, right? All white people weren't about slavery. I'm talking, they risked their lives. And so even when we look back at that that oppression, even back then, there were white people that hid slaves and risked their lives. And so we work with the fabulous people that we have, and I feel like, I think of Shay, again, my Lisa Goldblatt Grace, when we're hiring, and this little white Jewish woman, and she's like, I want a woman of color for that position, and not just mentoring positions, right? We're looking for a prevention director. I think we're gonna hire a white woman, but she's like, God, it would be so much better if we had a woman of color. Why aren't they applying? And so we work with what we have. And I like a woman who is not of color, because what I appreciated about her, she works in a very white culture and she kind of hates it. She's like, I used to work in the Bronx. You know what I mean? And she even thought what she worked was very white. And she wanted to be in an environment that was of color. So I just wanted to share that. And I'm tired now, Shay. I'm probably not going to say nothing else.
No, you don't get, no. You don't
I
get
can't
to
leave you? Okay, I'm going to support you.
Okay. There's only really two more that I think are super. Well, all of them are good questions. They were all good questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. To the survivors, what is something a service provider did or you wish they did to help? I am specifically calling out this question because Joy and I were having Joy is not in the room. Of course, she's not in the room. And I were having a conversation about this earlier. No one has had a conversation with me about positive self-love. Basically, no one's had a good conversation with me about good sexuality after the life. I think most survivors in the room can kind of acknowledge that we have this very, very strange relationship with sex. We really do. We have a very hard time parsing out the differences of the things that we like versus the things that we've been told we like. And I think for some reason, it's one of those topics that always gets glossed over. And I would have really loved it if at some point somebody said, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. It is okay to explore your sexuality in a healthy manner with people that you love and care about in this relationship setting. We are constantly trying to fill. There was a great Peter Qualiatine, who was a director at Ops for a long time. Many of you know who he is. Always says that sex buyers are trying to fill relational needs with non-relational sex. And when we think about that, that means that my entire understanding of sex is non-relational sex. That's not healthy. So I think we need to be willing to have some of the really awkward, tough, hard conversations with the survivors in our lives. And we as survivors do a really good job at this. Like, man, I'll tell you, you cannot have these conversations in public. You cannot. But they're conversations that we need to be having. And sometimes we need your help to understand what this relational idea looks like. So I want to encourage everyone in the room to kind of step out of the comfort zone and say, okay, human anatomy 101, here we go. Because most of us are not understanding our anatomy even from our own perspectives. We're understanding it from perspectives of sex buyers or those who are told about those things that we have been told. So I think that's that's just something that I'm going to say was not said to me, and I would have really liked to have had that conversation. Benita, do you have something?
I just walked in, so I didn't hear the whole question. I just heard about the sex and the relational part. One thing that I say, because so many people never mention sex when they talk about prostitution. Even the women that are involved, the girls, they just never mention the sex. They mention everything else around it. You know what I mean? Oh, the cars, the clothes you wear, the money that you might make, all this kind of stuff. But nobody ever mentions the sex. And I want to say that I really have started within these last years talking about that to the women and to audiences, because it's all about that. You can't avoid that. If you're going to talk about prostitution, get up the nerve to say sex. You know what I mean? I mean, you have to say it, because it is not a relational thing in prostitution. And I tell the women when I say, okay, you mentioned everything about it, but you haven't mentioned how you feel about the sex. We're grown here. How do you feel when he tells you to get down on your knees and open your mouth 5 times a day? How would you feel if it was your man, your lover? You wouldn't even like that. I mean, you know, some women are with guys 5, 10, 15 times a day. And I guess for me, because I am, you know, a human, and people are saying, oh, you know, you got your people who say they love it. I've worked with the women who said they love it, and they have made big money. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of what prostitution is, and you start talking about all the different types of sex, what I see then is tears, I see embarrassment, I don't like that part of it. You can't avoid that part of it. That's what it is. That's what it is. So if you want to work with this issue, I tell women who aren't involved, the only way that I can help you to understand that, whoever you're with that you love so much, how many times you want him to come in and screw you a day? Is it okay 5 times, 10, 20? It's not. Why? Why is that not okay for you? Because you are a human being. And there's something inside us that says something's wrong with this. Prostitution is about a sex act. That's what it's about. It's about having some kind of sex with somebody. If you're 10, 12, if you're 18, 25, 55, and nobody likes that. Nobody wants to say it. But that is what it is. If we could get that clear in our minds, we could understand what this is all about. Women say that it's rape. It's paid rape. That's what it feels like to me. We have to get that in our psyche. You want to be raped by your husband every day? 10, 15 times your boyfriend? These women are with men they don't even know. That they wouldn't even give the time of day. If you can't do it with your man that many times a day, don't think I can do it with a stranger and like it. So I just want to say that.
I got one more, but that's just, it's a relatively, I think this is actually a good one for you, Shay. Because, well, you and me and all the other survivors that do work in the larger national movement, I think this is a good one. How do we all connect and come behind you alongside each other to be one voice in combating the pro-sex as work movement? Is there a website, content we can share on social media, or a hashtag? What was your hashtag?
Yeah. Death by prostitution.
Death by prostitution. Hashtag death by prostitution. So there you go, there's a hashtag. I think there are a lot. I think there's, Shay, are you leaving? Really? Seriously, woman.
I know, I can take her place for a second.
Good job. Come on. So, I mean, the reality is yes, there are many. There are tons of these things. Shared Hope International does really good. Thank you, Shay. I knew you're coming for me. I love it. World Without Exploitation has a great website. They are very good at movement building, in my opinion. CatW International has a great listserv. give me some more. Ending Exploitation Collaborative, that's endingexploitation.org in Seattle. Oh, great, awesome. This was actually where I was hoping you were going to go with this, so thank you. There are conferences coming up. Oh, thank you. Prostitution Research.
And education?
Yeah, but it's only prostitutionresearch.com, right?
Prostitutionresearcheducation.com.
Yes, which is an amazing resource. I mean, like this, she has compiled tons and tons and tons of studies. I know that Chris is writing, you have an anthology coming up that is in partnership with Shay and the CSE Institute that is taking submissions, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. No? Yes. 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 It's happening. Thank you, Sarah. So there are a ton of different movements. There's hashtags. There's all these things. Shay, please take this away, as I know that you and Autumn probably have something to say about that.
Thank you. So, I can't thank the two of you enough. I don't have anything else to say.
That's a first. We don't have anything to say. Right.
Yeah.
There's an article, and it's written by Taina Bename. She's the executive director of the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, and it's done by, oh, hi, I'm Autumn Burris, for those that don't know. It's the title of the article is Why We Must Oppose the Full Decriminalization of Prostitution. It was written in the Dignity Journal, a journal on sexual exploitation and violence dated July 2017. And it really goes into why we must fight up against and oppose the full decriminalization of prostitution. And I'll leave it out on my table if you guys want to. It's free, it's a PDF, it's online, it's a simple Google search. Thank you and have a nice day.
She's so So to answer that question, I'm on the executive committee of World Without Exploitation, as is Autumn Burris, Nikki Bell, Benita Carter, Anne Ream, who was here with us earlier today. Am I missing anybody in the room on the executive committee of World Without?
Ann Matheson.
Oh yeah, where's it? Oh right, and her, yeah, hi, Ann Matheson. And we are hosting in Washington D.C. on May. I have to look at the dates because I'm going down the day before. May 22nd and 23rd. Join us for Now and Next. It's the 2019 World Without Exploitation convening. I'm going to put these back on the table out there. All of us are moderating or participating on panels. I know Elisa's moderating a panel. Audrey is. Benita is. Kathleen, I hope you're coming. You are, right? Yeah. Okay. Anna's also moderating a panel. There's a lot of really amazing national people in this movement who are going to be there. And again, it's this 2-day convening. It's at the Wink down in Washington, D.C. And if you have not already at this point, you all should go on World Without Exploitation's website. It is phenomenal. It's worldwithoutexploitation.org. You can get all the information about the Now and Next conference on the website and sign up. I really encourage everyone to do it. I'm excited about going. I know that all of us at the CSE Institute will be down there as well. But Mal, can you put this on the table back outside in case people want to grab them? It's going to be awesome. Thank you. And I would be not doing my good job as an executive committee member if I didn't say that I hope all of you will really consider coming down. It's going to be great. So with that, I want to just again thank everybody who is my student, who is one of the lawyers who works, Jamie and Sarah, obviously Michelle, my co-founder. Just we really are so grateful that all of you continue to support the work we do at the CSE Institute, that you come back year after year, that you make me promise that we're going to do something again the following year, and we generally do, as you know. To self-plug us, please go to our website here and see where you can click on Contact Us, sign up to get our newsletters. We really try hard only to push one out a month. We try to remain really current and not clog up your in-bins. Follow us on Twitter at what? Jane, you don't like our Twitter feed, but what is it? At CSE Institute. We have a Facebook page. Are we getting an Instagram? The Communications School, the seniors, we are clients. The CSU is just clients of the School of Communications. You guys have been awesome, taking pictures all this time. So it's great being in a university, right? You get seniors to do your comms for free. It's pretty cool. But again, Angie Henderson wanted me to remind everyone that we are going to be sending out an email at some point today or over the weekend with a survey about your experiences here at the conference. So please, if you get that email, don't delete us. It would really mean a lot to me personally and to my team if you guys could give us feedback on what you think about this conference and how we could be doing. She's like the paparazzi. About how we could be doing better and maybe pushing the ball forward and being innovative in the future. I could not thank the Inn here at Villanova, Robin Oster and Kathy Welsh and their team for hosting us here. They're always so gracious and wonderful, and I hope you all enjoyed your time here with us at the end. Am I missing anything, Michelle? Again, Angie, do the survey. Was there anything else on the list that I needed to say? You guys are amazing. Thank you for taking the time out of your lives to come and learn from the survivors who I cannot say this enough, teach me every day how to be a better lawyer, but really just a better person. So to all of them in this room, thank you.